And welcome in, everyone, to this week's episode, well, a special 2-episode-a-week version of the Ziggy and Zarley podcast. This is Jim Merritt. With me, as always, is Paul Roper. And we'll be bringing you some hockey talk today. Maybe not as long as our previous efforts, as it is only about 3 or 4 days in between podcasts today. So, but Paul, how you doing on this fine day?
Doing quite well. I think we might actually have some more bracket talk today. I'll just lead off with that for a short time, but the color bracket that my girlfriend Gina created was working great until Notre Dame got swamped last night. But that bracket included the 12-5 upset. I forget which one now. Oregon included a 12-5 Oregon upset, included a 13-4 upset of LaSalle over Kansas, and the creme de la creme of upsets that was actually chosen thanks to the color bracket, Florida Gulf Coast University over Georgetown, a 15-2.
Wow.
So my hypothesis proved true. Let your girlfriend pick the bracket. Don't look up all these stats. Choose whatever colors are better because it actually works. Somebody won the bracket pool back when I was in college because they picked what team colors they liked. That was the year Florida won for the first time.
I mean, I'm going all blue. I'm going Duke. I'm going North Carolina. I'm going all blue teams. If there's not a blue in the on the other team's color, I guess if I had to pick, I might go red or green. But if there's blue anywhere on the jersey, I'm going blue.
Well, Gina, her color that she did not want to win was red. So favorites like Indiana and Louisville are out.
They're gone.
They're gone. They're number one seeds. Don't pick them. They wear red. And hopefully that'll prove true. So
adjust your brackets accordingly.
That's right. Adjust your brackets accordingly. And keep it in mind for next year. I won't reveal the rest of the color patterns. I'm going to keep that secret safe with me and Gina because I think it's going to win us some money in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if it goes well this year, you'll be on the first flight to Vegas, first weeks of March next year to go pick your bracket down in Vegas, and they'll be looking at it like, you sure about this? A 16 over a 1? I'm telling you, green's the color this year. Green is the way to go.
That's right. And I tell you, I don't think actually green is her favorite color. So the green teams were the ones that were advancing, such as Michigan State, Oregon, Miami's picked to win the whole thing. Florida Gulf Coast wears green. That's why they got the nod over Georgetown. They were the only 15 seed we were willing to pick. So hopefully that'll work out. And I'm sure what Vegas probably didn't bet on last night was a beatdown by the Red Wings on the Anaheim Ducks, looking like the Red Wings of old, a 5-1 victory over Anaheim.
Yeah, absolutely stunning victory. I thought for sure looking at that matchup, Detroit, Anaheim just tearing the league up, coming off that big victory over Chicago 4-2. That Red Wings old, kind of slow, not really that good at defense. Jimmy Howard hasn't been the best in the world this year, but all of a sudden Justin Applicator comes out of nowhere with 3 goals, 1 assist. Datsuk chips in a goal and 2 assists. Even Johan Franzen, the battered old mule, throws in a goal and 2 assists. So pretty impressive night for the Red Wings, making a big statement against the Anaheim Ducks.
And in that tough Western Conference, every point is necessary. That might have been a game that the Red Wings could have written off, but great game from them last night, and a role player like Justin Applicator coming through with the hat trick. So the Red Wings able to pick up a big 2 points against the Anaheim Ducks in emphatic fashion last night. I didn't see who got the start. That was Victor Fost, wasn't it? Which is unfortunate. I think it continues the recent struggles of my fantasy team. It's Humongous Beeg. Right now, the only thing that's Humongous Beeg is the amount of losses from week to week, as the head-to-head has not quite worked out well. Just tough luck this year. I think I'm giving up on fantasy hockey after this week. It looks like I'm heading to my 4th straight loss.
Wow. Well, it was a combination of both last night. Looks like Fast was in for the first 3, made 8 stops on 11 shots. Jonas Hiller came in to spell him and gave up 2 on 12. So not an overly exciting performance from either goaltender last night.
So a tough performance there for the Anaheim Ducks, but the Detroit Red Wings able to benefit from that. They pick up a 5-1 victory last night.
And speaking of Central teams winning 5-1, Columbus with a beatdown on the Calgary Flames last night.
Fire the cannon.
5-1 at home for Columbus. Really nice game from Nick Foligno. I mean, this is a guy that a lot of people don't consider to be a top talent kind of player, but scored 2 big goals last night about 51 seconds apart. So anytime you're getting that kind of contribution out of a guy like Nick Foligno, getting a big contribution, not so much last night, but also out of Mark Letestu, former Penguins prospect, And big goaltending performance as well from Sergei Bobrovsky, making 24 saves on 25 shots.
Hey, if he keeps it up, he might enter the Vezina Trophy conversation. Who would have thought? Not Paul Holmgren, that's for sure. But he's had a terrific stint, as we have noted lately. The Columbus Blue Jackets have not lost in regulation, I believe, in 11 games now. I think it's 11 games that they last lost in regulation. Quite a run for them. They're now above 500 for the first time with a 13-12-6 record, as I believe they lost their first game of the season. So I believe it's their first time that they're 500 in quite a while. Nonetheless, a very good run for them. They were able to beat a Calgary team that, as you would expect, are more superior than right now. Calgary, their defense atrocious, and it doesn't look like it's going to get much better for them. We mentioned that Jarome Iginla could be out sooner rather than later, although the price that they're asking for him, they might not be able to find somebody who's willing to trade for Jarome Iginla, considering his asking price is high for a 36-year-old right winger.
Yeah, I mean, the asking price that's been rumored on Twitter and by Rob Rossi of the Pittsburgh media is that they're looking for a roster player, a top defensive prospect, and a number 1 pick. And I mean, looking even at the Penguins, if the Penguins give up Tyler Kennedy as the roster player, that's not going to get a big response out of Calgary. You're also looking at giving up one of Joe Morrow, maybe Oli Mata, Scott Harrington, and then a first-round pick. I mean, it's definitely a year where the Penguins could make a big splash and go for it all with the way that they're playing right now. But at the same time, you got to look at the future, and you got those prospects to trade for young wingers that you're going to keep on the team, not for rentals that you may or may not be able to sign after the run's over.
So it'll be interesting to see what the Flames do with the trade deadline not too far away. I believe as we speak, 10 days away. I think it's the first week of April. So still some time for teams to try and make some deals. Jarome Iginla, one of those big names to be rumored to be moved by then, try and help shore up that shoddy Calgary Flames defense. And also the goaltending hasn't been up to par. It looks like Mika Kiprusoff, his best days are behind him. He was injured for a part of this year, but even before his injury, he struggled, and he has continued to struggle. Calgary might have to look for some options in that for next season.
Yeah, maybe the roster player that they should be asking for in a trade is a goaltender. I mean, it's getting bad with Mika. I mean, he's always been a favorite of mine, but looking more like Mika Kipper shaves off goals than he is Mika Kipper saves. So, unfortunately, Kipper's not doing too well lately. Had a couple of softies last night as well. Speaking of some soft goaltending, the Penguins pick up their 11th straight win last night over the New York Islanders, and I'm pretty sure the second goal that Nabokov gave up with 13.8 seconds left in the second period to Chris Kunitz is one that he would probably like back. Just kind of a basic wrister snapshot from high in the slot that somehow finds the 5-hole and trickles through on Nabokov. Really gave the Penguins a lot of jump in a game that they really were not in the first period. Got outshot 14-3, I believe, in the first period. Did a little bit more work in the second. Managed to come out of that tied 2-2, and then got a big goal by Brandon Sutter. Just go up 3-2, and then Pascal Dupuis hits the empty net with 0.1 left on the clock. They weren't sure if it was going to count at the beginning. They didn't even drop the puck for the last tenth of a second. All the players were already off the ice and celebrating, or not celebrating, as the Islanders' case may be. But another big win from the Penguins, and 11 straight at this time of year is always impressive. But we'll see if they can go for 12 tomorrow night against the Philadelphia Flyers.
Well, with the way the Flyers have been playing, it might be a cakewalk, but you never know. You might have results like 5-1 last night with the Detroit Red Wings over the Anaheim Ducks. And taking a look at those standings right now, Pittsburgh remains at the top with twice as many points as last place Florida, who've actually strung together consecutive victories, the second of those against the New York Rangers, who are continuing to struggle. And as we alluded to in the last podcast, John Tortorella might be on the hot seat, and a player that has been moved out, Jeff Halpern, claimed off of waivers by the Montreal Canadiens, who had him previously. A very intriguing move for the Rangers, who decided to cut ties with Halpern. He was a man brought in to help out with the penalty kill after the loss of Brandon Prust, win some face-offs, but found himself out of favor with the coaching staff in New York and is now back wearing the blue, black, and rouge in Montreal.
Yeah, it was a big pickup for Montreal because they're sitting right now at the 2 seed, 1 point behind the Penguins, I do believe, and 46 to 45. And that's just more strength on faceoffs, more strength on the penalty kill for Montreal, who's already a pretty strong team in those aspects. So good pickup for Montreal. Not really exactly sure what Halpern did in New York to get put to the doghouse there, but maybe Tortorella has been turning on the players as of late. Maybe this is the whipping boy they make an example of to try to get the rest of the team going.
So we'll see what Jeff Halpern can do in his return with the Montreal Canadiens. Chances are he probably won't be in the lineup tonight against the Buffalo Sabres. The rematch for the Sabres and the Canadiens. It's how weird the schedule is this year. They played in Montreal a few nights ago, Buffalo getting the win on Tuesday in overtime. They're back in Montreal again. It's such a topsy-turvy schedule in the NHL this year. Probably the stranger one this year is the Devils and the Capitals playing in Washington, D.C. within a span of 3 days, once on a Friday night and again on Sunday afternoon. But the Montreal Canadiens just behind the Pittsburgh Penguins in the standings and adding someone without having to give up somebody, which is always good.
Yeah, and especially with the trade deadline looming. Anytime you can add assets for nothing in return, it's always a good idea. So, and speaking of the trade deadline, my dad's own theory that Tyler Kennedy missed last night's game against the New York Islanders, reportedly that he was sick or had flu-like symptoms, but my dad is going a little more conspiracy theory mode and saying that maybe Mr. Kennedy was not sick, but they were ensuring that he was not injured because he is on his way out the door in Pittsburgh. So wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Tyler Kennedy moved, making $2 million a year currently as an RFA, not really putting up the production that they were hoping for after his big season where Sid and Gino were both out and he scored 20 goals, but hasn't really done much. I think he's got 2 or 3 goals on the season, and is mostly one of the whipping boys for the Penguins franchise right now.
Well, that he has. In fact, he was publicly called out by General Manager Ray Shero last month for his lack of effort. And with all the talent that they have on the roster and guys like Bo Bennett who have stepped up lately, Tyler Kennedy has started to fall more and more out of favor. And we always talk about the cliche, change of scenery. I think a player that might need it more than anyone is Tyler Kennedy. And you know that he has the talent to succeed, and I think any team that gets him will get a good player. So hopefully he could find some spot out there, because I think that he could be a valuable asset to any organization. Unfortunately, he's part of a numbers game in Pittsburgh. They got a lot of good players, and he's not going to see as much ice time when your younger guys are stepping up and doing the job offensively, which Tyler Kennedy has not been able to do this season.
Yeah, unfortunately, with his lack of goal-scoring success, at that cap hit too, when Malkin's going to be re-signed, Letang is hopefully going to be re-signed in the next year here. You're going to be looking for cap space anywhere you can get it, and if you're getting a performance out of a guy like Bo Bennett on a $700,000 contract, that you're getting more out of him than you are a guy on a $2 million contract, then you have to start making those decisions. I mean, it's going to be an interesting offseason for the Penguins regardless of what happens in the playoffs, because you have guys like Cook, Dupuis, all coming up to their UFA status, as well as Tyler Kennedy on the RFA status. So going to be interesting to see who gets re-signed. Craig Adams, is also going to be a UFA, so they're going to have an interesting topic of the penalty kill next season, which has struggled recently this season. Started out quite well, but is actually down in the lower third of the league, clicking at only about 76 to 78% right now. But it'll be interesting to see what they do with the penalty kill, because Craig Adams is a big part of it right now. Could walk out the door for free next year. Well,
they do miss Jordan Stahl in that aspect, but with Brandon Sutter scoring the way he has been lately, I suppose that you could take the good with the bad. And I think the penalty kill is not the biggest worries that they have right now during an 11-game winning streak. So not too shabby, but Craig Adams is a solid player. He's another player that I would like to have on my roster. Very gritty player, and I'm sure that a team will secure his services unless the Penguins decide to get him back on the cheap. He's certainly worth whatever contract that he gets. I would assume it'll be lower than probably the 1.2, 1.3 million mark.
Well, right now he's taken league minimum to play for the Penguins, so he's actually at $550,000 right now, or $575,000, whatever.
He should get a raise.
He definitely deserves a raise, but it all comes down, like I said, to the numbers game with with the re-signing of the major talent on the team with Malkin and Letang. So unfortunately, it may be an odd man out kind of situation for Craig Adams if that does come to pass. But it would be a shame because he's been a really good player for the Penguins and has given the hometown discount to stay with the Penguins. But, and speaking of our forgotten friend Jordan Staal, he's toiling away down in Carolina, and my friend JC at Caniac Cast probably won't want to listen to this next little bit, but Jordan Staal in the news this week for the worst kind of reasoning, actually giving Martin Brodeur a power play goal when he banked a shot on a delayed penalty call off the wall, hoping to find his man at the point, and it trickled all the way down the ice and into the net. So an own goal for Jordan Staal this week, credited to Martin Brodeur on the power play. So not the greatest week for Jordan Staal.
The old Rob Ramage. He ramaged the puck in. That's what happened when Billy Smith scored the first goal by a goalie in NHL history. And it's actually the second time that's happened to Martin Brodeur in his career. The first goalie to do that, and he also put one into the net himself back in the playoffs in the late 90s. So Martin Brodeur now has credit for 3 goals in his NHL career. What can he do? That was his first game back after a long absence. Gets credit for a goal. What a lucky guy, that Martin Brodeur. And quite an unusual play if you haven't seen it. But always funny when it happens. It also happened last year against the Devils by the Hurricanes. So call it karma, if you will, between New Jersey and Carolina.
Yeah, and Martin Brodeur also gets the win in that game. I believe they took that one 4-1. So good on Marty for coming back to a strong performance after a long absence and an uncanny ability to score goals from inside his own crease. But this actually puts some pressure on some other players because now Martin Brodeur has more goals than Ryan Clough, than Ville Laino, than Alex Goligoski. There are some players out there who are still sitting on that donut to start the year, and we're almost getting towards the end here, boys. So when Marty Brodeur has a higher position on the goal-scoring charts than you do, might be time to step up your game.
Absolutely, and I'm sure the Devils are very happy to have Brodeur back as they had struggled with the Moose and net Johan Hedberg. The Devils were able to win in that game against Carolina, and right now sitting in 7th place in the Eastern Conference standings, thanks in part to their strong start to the season. They had really struggled over the past month without Martin Brodeur. Now that he's back in the lineup, the Devils hoping to make some headway in the Eastern Conference standings. They have made a couple moves over the last month to try and pick up the team, picking up on reacquiring Alexei Ponikarovsky, picking up Andrei Loktianov, the former Windsor Spitfire, and recently acquiring Matt D'Agostini, formerly of the St. Louis Blues. And the Devils right now just trying to see what pieces they could fit into their system. But having Brodeur back, if he's on top of his game, makes the Devils as dangerous a team as anyone in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and it's almost like Lou Lamoriello is just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks here. I mean, Dyna Subris goes down, he reacquires Ponikarovsky. They're not scoring very well, so he goes trying to make a move, get a guy like Loktianov from the Kings. Now Matt D'Agostini for a whole series of conditional picks. If they do re-sign, qualify or re-sign him on the RFA, they're giving up a 4th rounder. If they let him walk, they only give up a 5th rounder and return a 7th round pick from St. Louis. So kind of a strange conditional pick trade, but it's always dangerous when you see a division opponent loading up on offense. And so New Jersey, with Martin Brodeur back with better scoring, would not surprise me if they make a climb up the Eastern Conference standings.
Devils with just 78 goals this season is currently tied for the 3rd least total in the NHL's Eastern Conference, and with Brodeur back in the lineup, we'll see if they can turn things around. Devils, believe it or not, 2nd in the Atlantic Division, well behind those Pittsburgh Penguins that you glowingly speak about. Why not? They've won 11 in a row. Matt D'Agostini, a bit of a role player, maybe add some sandpaper to that Devils lineup. We will see what happens with them. Big news out of Buffalo, where it continues to be quite the turmoil there. Thomas Vanek is back in the lineup.
Yay.
And out of the lineup as a healthy scratch is Drew Stafford. Is this the sign that he could be on the out as well?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me, and I'm actually kind of surprised that it took this long because Drew Stafford never really struck me as a Lindy Ruff kind of player, and certainly hasn't been getting any favors from Coach Ralston as once he came in. But Drew Stafford is what he is. He's a very streaky goal scorer. So, I mean, you're going to get times where he's going to put the puck in the net 8-9 games out of 12. But you're also going to have times where he goes 20 games without scoring. And unfortunately, that's not something that Buffalo can afford right now, especially with guys like Ville Leno taking up roster spots, also not scoring. So it's sad to say for Drew Stafford that he's probably on his way out there in Buffalo, and I wouldn't be surprised to see his name being bandied about during the trade deadline. But what are your thoughts on Stafford's recent play, and was this a warranted healthy scratch?
Well, when you consider that he's put up 50-point seasons in his last 2 seasons, yeah, it is warranted. Minus 12 and 31 games, just 11 points. So he's on pace to finish the year with about 16 or 17 points. If it was an 82-game season, he was completely healthy. It would only be about a 25, 30-point season. And considering his career high came in a year in which he only played 62 games, that was 2 seasons ago, 31 goals and 52 points. He was one of the best players on the Sabres that year. They were a playoff team that year. And when players like him are invisible from the lineup, it's very tough for them to succeed. And he's one of the many underachievers on that team. I think it could be a revolving door of healthy scratches on that team, whether it's him or Ville Leno or Nathan Gerbe. The list goes on, but this is a Sabres team that is completely underachieved. You would think that with all the talent that they do have on there, they might be able to make something out of themselves. But they might have earned the label, well, if not for the Flyers, as maybe the most overrated team in the NHL. I thought they were entering the year. Some people had them pegged as a playoff team, one of the best teams in the Northeast Division. Honestly, I'm not surprised they're struggling. I think this is a team that is not as good as everyone predicted them to be, and I'm not surprised they're out of the playoff picture. And there needs to be some serious moves made there to try and pick up the spirits of that team, because there's really very few impact players, and the players that are supposed to be your impact players, such as Drew Stafford, such as Ryan Miller, such as Tyler Myers, have been invisible for the better part of this year. For some have been invisible for longer than that. Ryan Miller and Tyler Myers being perfect examples. These are players that haven't been very good in 2 or 3 years right now.
Yeah, and even worse than being invisible is being visible because you're playing so poorly. And that's actually the case right now with Tyler Myers and with Ryan Miller. I mean, Tyler Myers was a healthy scratch earlier this season because his defense was so atrocious. And, I mean, at one point they had given up the most goals in the league. And, yeah, a lot of that is on Ryan Miller because he's the one back there making stops. But if you get no help from a 6'7" dinosaur who, can't skate and gives up the puck pretty easily. I mean, of course, I'm still bitter he hurt Malkin, but Tyler Myers, just for the pedigree, the prestige that he came in when he was drafted, and he was going to be the Zdeno Chara of the Buffalo Sabres, and now, I mean, Zdeno Chara is not even in, this guy 150 spots from this guy. So it's just ridiculous that how bad that he's playing, how bad Ryan Miller has been. And, I mean, Jonas Enroth, who was hot at times coming in for Ryan Miller and kept the Sabres afloat a little bit, he's kind of fallen apart too. So, other than the Superman efforts of Thomas Vanek, who was scoring 5 points a game at the beginning of the season to keep them relevant, it's just nothing going for the Buffalo Sabres right now.
Well, in the case of Tyler Myers, who's been a Calder Trophy winner, and for some reason it's looked like a shell of his former self, has not really improved, has actually regressed, even though he's in his early 20s. I hate to say it, but I think we might be playing a game in a few months. What KHL team will Tyler Myers suit up for? Because with the way he's been playing, I don't know if any NHL team want to take a chance on him. Probably because of his size, they'll take a chance on him, but there's a strong possibility he might not last 10 years in the NHL with how bad he's playing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things in this league. If you're small, you have to prove that you can play. But if you're big, you have to prove that you can't. And maybe he's done a pretty good job of proving that he can't play. But with that kind of size, with that kind of pedigree, even winning the Calder Trophy, I mean, people will look at that and they will see a big defenseman who won the Calder, has talent, and maybe as a reclamation project. I mean, these are the kind of guys that Jimmy Rutherford down in Carolina likes to sign.
Yep.
To the Joe Corvos, the Yoni Pitkinens of the world, these defensemen that look bad other places, and he brings them in, and they do well in that system. So maybe it won't be the KHL Dynamo Moscow Dynamo team we have to worry about. Maybe it'll just be down the road a bit in Carolina, because you see so many like Joe Corvo and Yoni Pitkin struggle. I mean, Joe Corvo was awful in Boston, and he's back in Carolina and playing well again. So there's something in the water down there. I don't know if it's the sunshine and the happy vibes or what's going on down there in North Carolina, but it makes bad defensemen not so bad. So maybe Tyler Myers should start asking for a trade to Carolina.
Why not? They've had a few good players who've come down there. Another player I could think of is Joe Corvo, who's done well out there in Carolina. Or not Joe Corvo, I'm sorry, Tim Gleason. Yeah. Because you just mentioned Joe Corvo. Tim Gleason, who is, like Corvo, I believe, another American defenseman. They've seemed to have done a great job of developing defensemen down there, but Tyler Myers right now struggling, as are the rest of the Buffalo Sabres, and now Drew Stafford, the newest healthy scratch.
I think Ryan Miller's doing more than anything had happened at Michigan State, though. I mean, the way he's interacting with the media right now, you can tell that he's doesn't have a whole lot of faith in his teammates in front of him, and some of the comments that he's made about guys like Patrick Coletta, and he's even come out and admitted that I'm Ryan Miller and I say dumb things to the media. Well, then maybe you should stop talking to the media, because he's getting to a Mike Richards level of media presence where he's just having tirades of terrible language, and it's petulant, it's childlike, and if this is what he's doing to try to get off the Buffalo Sabres and get traded out to California where his wife is, well, that's one way to go about it, but you're not making any friends on the way out there. So is there any spot where you see that Ryan Miller could potentially go? Is there anybody that still wants Ryan Miller right now?
Well, you know what? You could punish him. You could bring him to Calgary, but I believe he has a no-movement clause. Calgary is as far, it is closer to California than Buffalo is, but it's even more snowier than Buffalo.
Yeah, if you can believe that.
So Ryan Miller right now, I think, talking his way out of a job in Buffalo, especially when they have a capable netminder and Jonas Enroth, who might be ready to take the reins out there, or they might have to test the free agent market. Remember, Terry Pagula's got all this money that Penn State is seeing for the ice hockey program. He might have to pour it into a new goaltender and maybe some spare parts to sort of help this team try and break out of this funk. The Buffalo Sabres right now, as a lifelong Rangers fan, I really think the Sabres are the team that are gonna wait more than 54 years to win a Stanley Cup.
Wow.
There's just no luck in that city. From Scott Norwood to all the Super Bowl losses that they've had, to no goal in 1999, to the Fog game in the 70s, which I think they won, but they didn't win that series, to losing an NBA team, to trying to go for a Major League Baseball team and never succeeding. You know what? At least Cleveland has NFL championships from the 60s. They haven't won a Super Bowl. They've at least won NFL championships. Poor Buffalo might not ever win anything, especially with the way the Bills are run right now. And you have your GM having a wiretap phone conversation with how bad Ryan Fitzpatrick is. Now they don't have a quarterback. I don't know what. I am glad I'm not a Buffalo sports fan.
And I guarantee you that no Buffalo sports fans are going to continue to listen to the podcast after that. No, I'm just kidding. We love you, Buffalo. We love you.
I do. You guys have great Waynes. Duff's is a great place for Waynes, by the way.
It's true, and
a lot of my friends are Buffalo fans.
And the building's nice. I went up there and caught a Colorado-Buffalo game. Great building. Seats were nice. People were nice. I went up and caught a Tampa Bay game, sat 4 rows behind the bench for like $80. It was awesome.
And I would love to see them win.
Yeah.
Only to hear what Rick Jenneret's call would be.
Oh, I would love to hear Jenneret get to call a Stanley Cup final.
He deserves it. He deserves to call a Stanley Cup championship. Even if they freeze him, after God forbid he passes away, if they freeze him like Walt Disney and bring him out to call the championship game, he deserves that. He deserves a shot at a championship. But unfortunately, with the way that things are being run right now in Buffalo, I remember a few years back they had Tom Golisano coming. He was a billionaire, and they were expecting good things out of that. Now they would make deep runs, but they didn't go to the Stanley Cup Finals. Now you have Terry Pagula. All I see are empty promises right now with this team. And these fans deserve better, because this is Buffalo. It's a Rust Belt city that has fallen on hard times, but the fans will continue to support the team through thick and thin. And this is a fan base that truly deserves to see a champion. And I might be making fun of them right now, but I do it out of love. If I didn't make fun of you, it means I don't like you. So this is a fan base that truly deserves to see the Sabres have a shot at the championship. But I think as long as Darcy Rogier is in charge right there, they're not going to get there, because you look at the team that they have right now, it is not built to win hockey games.
Yeah, and you have to wonder how much of that was Pegula, too, when they came into the free agency market. And it was a weak class. There just wasn't a ton out there. But to throw money for the sake of throwing money and sign a guy like Ville Leino and sign a guy like Christian Ehrhoff, who Ehrhoff's been better than Leino, but I would hope so when you gave him a $10 million signing bonus just to come to Buffalo. So, Ehrhoff's been okay. I wouldn't put the fate of this team on Ehrhoff's shoulders by any stretch of the imagination. But, if they are looking for a new goaltender, and how great things worked out with their last Philadelphia cast-off in Ville Leino, perhaps once the Flyers buy out Ilya Bryzgalov, they can sign him to a humongous big contract like the one he got in Philly that he's about to get bought out of. I mean, this is a team in Philadelphia that has two major issues right now, and one of them is named Ilya Bryzgalov, and the other one's named Danny Briere. And I would not be surprised to see amnesty buyouts used on one or both of those players.
And Chris Pronger on the books, too.
Well, Chris Pronger gives him the sweetheart deal and never retires, so he stays on long-term IR, which is complete garbage, Philly. You're $5 million over the cap, thanks. But no, because he will not retire, because he keeps rumoring that he's trying to come back and play again. And I'm sorry, I love you, Chris Pronger. I loved watching you play hockey, but you're never playing again, and we all know it. And you're almost, he's got to be 39, 40 years old now.
He's up there.
He's banged up.
I think he was the first pick in '93.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's definitely way up there in age.
And make him 38, I believe. We'll look it up.
Bare minimum 38. But, yeah, so because they keep saying that he's going to come back, even though he's not going to come back, they get to keep that $5 million cap hit that they moronically signed him for after he was 35, and will stay on the books even if he retires. So the only way for them to keep that cap hit off the books is for him to stay on LTIR and not count. So because they do the cap every day, and because he's not going to be a player on the team anytime soon, they can manipulate the cap any way that they want with his contract. And it's why they're absolutely maxed against it right now, despite the $5 million cap savings.
Yes, and Pronger is actually 38. He'll be 39 in October. I was right at the draft year, 93, but he was second overall, because who could forget the great Alexander Daig picked first overall. Alexander Daig, probably the Tony Mindarich of the NHL draft in the last 20 years in terms of being actually, that would be Patrick Stefan. He was pretty bad, but that was also a very bad draft, when the Sedin brothers were literally the only good players from the first round of that draft. I believe Marty Howell was a first rounder that year too. You want to look at that draft. It was not the 2001 draft. It was the 99 draft. Of how mind-bogglingly awful it is. This is a fun game to play.
All right, well, while you look up that, I will tell my favorite Patrick Stefan story, which is the infamous Patrick Stefan story, which is when the Dallas Stars are playing the Edmonton Oilers. The Dallas Stars are up 4-3 in the game. Patrick Stefan skating down to the empty net. All he has to do is just tap the puck. Just tap it forwards. It'll go in. You'll win 5-3. Everybody will be happy. Somehow he has a complete molecular breakdown, trips, falls, the puck goes the other way, and Ales Hemsky buries it with like 8 seconds left to send it to overtime, and they go on to lose the game in overtime. And that is the memory of Patrick Stefan that I will always have.
Yep, and I think my memory was once the Atlanta Thrashers left for Winnipeg, even though he wasn't there for that. But as part of the many mismanagement, many bad personnel decisions made by the Thrashers that eventually led to their demise in Atlanta. So let's take a look at the draft that year. This is how bad it was. Patrick Stefan, first overall pick. Probably the worst first overall pick in the last 20 years, because at least Daig had some good years in the NHL. And by good, he probably had 40 points. And Stefan you would never confuse him with being a good hockey player, much less a first overall pick. Now, the Sedin twins, obviously slam dunks as second and third overall picks. Brian Burke traded up to get Daniel Sedin with the second pick and pick Henrik with the third pick. And then the Rangers decided to trade to the top 10 by getting both Pavel Brendel and Jamie Lundmark, which is probably the worst example of trading up in NHL history. As Pavel Brendel didn't do much, neither did Jamie Lundmark. 5th overall, Tim Connolly, arguably one of the better players in the first round.
And former
Yachter, but has had an okay NHL career, and right now is stuck in the AHL. He's pretty much in purgatory with the Marlies right now. And then you go, the list goes on and on. Brian Finley, goaltender, didn't play much. Chris Beach, his claim to fame is that he was traded for Jaromir Jagr. Taylor Pyatt, still a serviceable NHL player, has actually done quite well with the Rangers, but you want to think of him as the number 8 overall pick in a draft. No. Then there's Lundmark, Branislav Meze, who had a cup of coffee in the NHL, Oleg Saprikin, Denis Svitky, Yanni Rita, Jeff Gilson, Scott Kellman, who, that's right, never played a game in the NHL. David Tanabe, who was not bad when he played, decent power play quarterback, I believe, represented the U.S. a few times at World Championships. Yeah. So not a bad player. Barrett Jackman, very solid NHL defenseman, very good pick at number 17. Konstantin Koltsov, I'm sure Penguins fans could talk about him for days about how disappointing he was. Kirill Safronov, who never played. Barrett Heiston, who played a few games. Nick Boynton, who's been a pretty serviceable NHL defenseman. Maxime Ouellet played 1 game in the NHL. Steve McCarthy still playing. Lucas Serreta did not play that much. Mikhail Kuleshov, no relation to Artem Kuleshov, and like Artem, won't play in the NHL.
Oh,
that was bad. I'm allowed to say that now.
Poor Artem.
Marty Havlat, very good pick at 26, and Ari Ahinen and Christian Kudrat. Ari Ahinen was supposed to be the heir apparent to Marty Brodeur. Instead, he was the heir apparent to Marty Brodeur, pretty much. As he's been one of the many goaltenders the Devils have hoped would take over, but did not. And there you go. That was the first round of the woeful 1999 NHL entry draft. Best pick in the draft that year was a Flyer pick in the 9th round. 7th round. Henrik Zetterberg was picked in the 7th round that year by the Red Wings, one of their classic late-round picks, late-round finds from overseas. So that's a good game plan. Actually, 2 picks after him was Radim Vrbata.
That's not a bad pickup either.
That's not bad. They would both be first-rounders if they had a repick.
Oh, my God. They'd probably be in the top 5 if you had to repick that draft. I mean, this is also the same Red Wings team that picked Datsuk in, I think, the 6th round. So whenever people are throwing willy-nilly away their 6th and 7th round picks, looking at you, Winnipeg, you gave us the 7th for Tangradi. We're going to go find Henrik Zetterberg. They throw away these draft picks, and I've always talked about the draft being a crapshoot, and this is why, because you can completely whiff on the first-round pick and pick the best player in the draft probably with a pick in the 7th round. So good on Detroit. Their scouting staff has always been terrific.
And another good pick in the draft that year, even though we've been bashing him earlier. Ryan Miller was a 5th rounder that year.
That's a good pick for a 5th round.
Solid pick, and even with his struggles, would still be a first-rounder in this draft. Well, the NHL going strong, and this is always a fun topic, trying to figure out who your Hart Trophy candidate is right now. As we are 3/4 of the way through the season, it's hard to believe that we're saying that. We're just about 3/4 of the way through. Each team has played at least 30 games of about 17 or 18 to go. And some good candidates across the NHL. I'll start with you. Who do you think are your candidates to be the Hart Trophy winner come June?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm going to have to start Homer and take one, Sidney Crosby, leading the league in points, leading the league in assists, top 5, top 3, and plus minus. Sid being healthy is tremendous. To see Sid healthy again, and would certainly be a top vote for me for the Hart Trophy. It gets tougher from there, though, because there was a lot of guys that you looked at as potential Hart winners in the beginning of the year that have fallen apart. I mean, even as a dark horse candidate like Thomas Vanek, who was playing so well in the first part of the year, got injured, hasn't played much, been less effective since his injury. A guy like Victor Fost, who was just tearing up, lighting the world on fire for Anaheim Ducks there for a while, has come back down to earth a little bit. And then even guys like Corey Crawford and Ray Emery in Chicago, you would maybe think of one of those as your potential Hart. But then, Corey Crawford went down, Ray Emery came in and played well, so they kind of split the votes there. I mean, you got to look at a guy like Jonathan Taves, maybe a Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane having one of the best seasons of his young career, so I wouldn't be surprised to see his name get a lot of votes. And it's hard to argue with a guy like Steven Stamkos, who's going to put up a ton of goals, but at the same time, if his team doesn't make the playoffs, does it really matter? So for me, it's Sid, and you can call me a homer and you can do whatever you want, but at the same time, make me a better argument. Who's more valuable to their team? You know, if Evgeny Malkin is down and Sid's carrying the way right now, you've lost Malkin and Letang, and Sid's still finding a way to win games for the Penguins right now. So,
as far as the Real Hard Trophy pick, yeah, I will have to agree with you that Sidney Crosby so far is having a terrific year, and we saw it last year when the Penguins didn't have him. They played well, but boy, not as well as they're playing right now. He's certainly a big part of that lineup, and I would have to agree with you. I do believe that Sidney Crosby is the pick to win the Hart Trophy. So that's our look at the NHL. We'll take a quick look at the OHL right now, and it's playoff time in the OHL. And I'm going with the Plymouth Whalers over the Barrie Colts, and so far the home team has won each of their respective Game 1s, including a beatdown by Plymouth on Sarnia 11-2 in Game 1. Scary thought what they could accomplish in the rest of this postseason. This is undoubtedly the best team in the OHL in the second half. And if they keep it up, it's going to be very, very tough to try and to beat them in a 7-game series, much less in one game of a 7-game series, because this is looking like a team that could steamroll through the competition.
Yeah, and actually, like, the way that they're playing right now reminds me of Otters playoff teams in recent years, where they would have to put together a perfect game to beat the team that they were playing, but they couldn't do it 4 times in a row. Or they couldn't do it 4 times out of 7. I remember going to an Otters game against the London Knights when they still had Tavares and Kadri, and we're just steamrolling the OHL as usual for the London Knights. But the Otters actually put together a perfect game, hit Tavares, made him a non-factor. I believe they won 3-2 or 3-1 that night. Went back to London the next night and got blown out like 7-2. So, I mean, when you have a team that good, like Plymouth is right now, like Barrie is, it's very hard for another team to put together the perfect game that you have to beat teams like that many times in a 7-game span. So, it's going to be very difficult. I would not expect to see them taking too long in any of their series on the way to the championship games.
So Plymouth with a great start to the OHL playoffs for them, and a great game to start the OHL playoffs, Snow and Sound, where the Attack earned a 2-1 overtime victory over the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. And in my opinion, I think that's going to be the toughest series of the first round, because the Greyhounds are a team that, like the Whalers, had a very strong second half. Not as strong as the Whalers, obviously, but Sheldon Keefe coming in, and many people know he's had baggage coming from the Barrie Colts, where he was part of the infamous Frost Boys, but has seemed to clean up his act after an NHL career. Won a few championships with the Pembroke Lumber Canes, I believe, in the junior C level, and has done quite well as coach of the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. Kyle Dubas making a leap of faith. It wasn't so much called a desperation move, but it might have been a move that could have saved his job in Sault Ste. Marie. Getting rid of veteran Mike Stapleton, who's well respected, goes in and brings in Sheldon Keefe, and the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds look like a team that could be set up for success in the future, might have one of the up-and-comers in the coaching ranks. And I think with him in charge, it could be a very tough series for the Owen Sound Attack, who are another team I like in the Western Conference playoffs.
Yeah, they are very evenly matched, so I would not be surprised to see that one perhaps even go the distance, and maybe even have 3 or 4 overtime games in that series. Anytime you have 2 teams that play as hard as they do, or is coached as well as they are, and match up so well against each other, you're going to see some fireworks for sure in that series. But unfortunately for them, I don't really think it matters who comes out of that series. I don't think either of them have what it takes to go to the end. So,
especially with the Plymouth Whalers looming in one of the following rounds, so it'll be a tough matchup for whoever has to draw the Plymouth Whalers, and depending on how things shake up, it could very easily be a Whalers Attack series. And if the Hounds end up advancing, it'll more than likely be a Hounds Knights series, as I would expect the Knights to go past the Saginaw Spirit in the first round. My predictions did come out on Thursday. I went with the Knights in 4. No, Knights in 5, I believe. Knights in 5. And then the Whalers in 4. I believe I had the Whalers sweeping. Attack in 6. over the Greyhounds. Kitchener in 5. That was a bit of a surprising prediction for some, but as I mentioned, with the way that the Storm played over the final weekend, granted they missed some players, but they didn't look all that impressive with a mostly full lineup against the Otters in their second to last game of the season. And then you go to the Eastern Conference. I don't think there's going to be any close series. I think we're going to see sweeps for Belleville and Barrie over their respective opponents, Mississauga and Kingston. Oshawa will probably lose one against Niagara, but that's it. It'll be Oshawa in 5, and I think I had Brampton in 5 also. So it'll be, as always, the OHL playoffs are fun, and we should see some great action over these next couple months to see who gets the right to go to Saskatoon and play in the Memorial Cup.
Yeah, and it's going to be great Memorial Cup regardless of either the Barrie Colts or the Plymouth Whalers, who are the expected to be in that dance to make that leap to go to the Memorial Cup. And it'll be interesting to see who comes out of the WHL as well as the Q. So, with Saskatoon hosting, it could be a very interesting Memorial Cup. And I would expect that the OHL is going to have a very good chance of taking home the Memorial Cup this year, regardless of whether Plymouth or Barrie makes it, especially with Barrie still somehow retaining the services of Mark Scheifele, who can't seem to stick in Winnipeg. So if either of those teams make it, I think they're going to have a great shot at taking home the Memorial Cup.
That will wrap up this week's edition of the Ziggy and Zarley podcast, and I'm sure the next time we will reach out to you will be trade deadline time, and certainly lots of teams trying to figure out whether that they are buyers or sellers. So probably one last thing before we actually wrap it up. With how close everything is in the NHL this year, are there going to be any real sellers in the NHL? Because there are a lot of teams that, even though they could be within a few points or in last place, still have a shot at making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much any NHL team right now is 5-game winning streak away from the playoffs. I mean, I don't think anybody's further than 10 points or 12 points out right now. So even in this shortened season with all the charity points, the loser points, and overtime, you see a lot of teams that probably shouldn't still be in the running but still are. But you look at a team like the Flyers, who are currently sitting outside of playoff position, and for them to get to 55 points, which many people assume would be the minimum you would have to get to in the Eastern Conference this year, to see that 55 points, you're looking at the Flyers going 14-4 for the rest of the season. They only have 18 games left. They can maybe lose 4 more times in regulation. So a team like Philadelphia, do you think you're going to be able to pull off 14 out of 18? Do you think you're going to be able to get to 55 points? That's where a lot of teams have to look. Not how close you are right now, but how many points off from 55 you are and how many points you can afford to lose. And that will tell us a little bit more about who the buyers and who the sellers are. But right now, anybody's a buyer. Because if you make a big splash and your team improves that much that you think you could win 75% of your games from here on out, why not take a shot? It's a shortened season. Crazier things have happened.
That's right. Right now, if the season ended today, and I hate that term so much, but we got to mention it, Winnipeg and Toronto in the first round of the NHL playoffs, which I want to see. That is a dream matchup for me. Two teams with a maple leaf in their logo. One of them, of course, being the Maple Leafs, and the other, the Winnipeg Jets. I wish they had their old logo, but
yes,
unfortunately not meant to be. So that would be your first-round matchup, 3-6. The Winnipeg Jets with the -15 goal differential against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
So gorgeous.
Oh, the bad Southeast Division.
Oh, it's awesome. And I mean, I'm specifically watching games now just because they're in the Southeast. And Winnipeg actually just gave up an 8-point swing to the Washington Capitals, losing 2 games to the Capitals, including a 6-1 drubbing last night by the Capitals in Winnipeg. So your predictions about Andrei Pavlik not being the smartest of goaltending choices, seeming to bite the Winnipeg Jets in the behind last night, as he was pulled after 3, and Al Montoya comes in and gives up 3 more. So big weekend for the Capitals. Somehow the Winnipeg Jets still hanging on as the 3 seed, because Carolina can't seem to win a game, or Tampa Bay for that matter either. So it's going to kind of come down just like last year when Florida backed into the 3rd seed in the playoffs, and we'll see who backs into the 3 seed this year to get immediately destroyed by whoever ends up as the 6.
Well, it'll be a lot of movement over the last couple of weeks. We can be sure of that. Thanks for tuning in again this week. I'm Paul Roper.
And this is Jim Merritt.
Have a good week, everybody.